Jared, Geraldine, and Jaredette 1 and 2 watched the starry picture in the visiplate change as the passage through hyperspace was completed in its non-time lapse. At once, the even powdering of stars gave way to the predominance of a single bright shining disk, the size of a marble, centered on the viewing screen. "That's X-23, said Jared confidently. His thin hands clamped tightly behind his back and the knuckles whitened. The little Jaredettes, both girls, had experienced the hyperspace passage for the first time in their lives and were self-conscious over the momentary sensation of inside-outness. They buried their giggles and chased one another wildly about their mother, screaming, "We've reached X-23! We've reached X-23! We've—" "Quiet, children," said Geraldine sharply. "Are you sure, Jared?" "What is there to be but sure?" asked Jared, glancing up at the bulge of featureless metal just under the ceiling. It ran the length of the room, disappearing through the wall at either end. It was as long as the ship. Jared scarcely knew a thing about the thick rod of metal except that it was called a microvac, that one asked it questions if one wished, that if one did not, it still had the task of guiding the ship to a pre-ordered destination, of feeding on energies from the various subgalactic power stations, of computing the equations for hyperspatial jumps. Jared and his family had only to wait and live in the comfortable residence of the quarters of the ship. Someone had once told Jared that the AC at the end of the microvac stood for automatic computer in ancient English, but he was on the edge of forgetting even that. Geraldine's eyes were moist as she watched the visiplate. "I can't help it. I feel funny about leaving Earth." "Why, for Pete's sake?" demanded Jared. "We had nothing there. We'll have everything on X-23. You won't be alone. You won't be a pioneer. There are over 1 million people on the planet already. Good Lord, our great-grandchildren will be looking for new worlds because X-23 will be overcrowded." Then, after a reflective pause, "I tell you, it's a lucky thing the computers worked out interstellar travel the way our race is growing." I know, said Geraldine miserably. Jaredette 1 said promptly, "Our microvac is the best microvac in the world." "I think so too," said Jared, tussling her hair. It was a nice feeling to have a microvac of your own, and Jared was glad that he was part of his generation and no other. In his father's youth, the only computers had been tremendous machines, taking up 100 square miles of land. There was only one to a planet. Planetary ACs, they were called. They had been growing in size for steadily 1,000 years, and then, all at once, came refinement. In place of transistors had come molecular valves, so that even the largest planetary AC could be put into a space only half the volume of a spaceship. Jared felt uplifted, as he always did when he thought that he had his own personal microvac, and it was many times more complicated than the ancient and primitive multivac that had first tamed the sun, and almost as complicated as the Earth's planetary AC, which is the largest, and had first solved the problem of hyperspatial travel and made trips to the stars possible. So many stars and so many planets, sighed Geraldine, busy with her own thoughts. I suppose families will be going out to new planets forever the way we are now. Not forever, said Jared with a smile. It will all stop someday, but not for billions of years. Many billions. Even the stars run down, you know. Entropy must increase. What's entropy, Daddy? Shrilled Jaredette 2. Entropy, little sweet, is just a word which means the amount of running down of the universe. Everything runs down, you know, like your little walkie-talkie robot, remember? Can't you just put in a new power unit like with my robot? The stars are the power units, dear. Once they're gone, there are no more power units. Jared at once set up a howl. Don't let them, Daddy! Don't let the stars run down! Now look what you've done, whispered Geraldine, exasperated. How was I to know that would frighten them? Jared whispered back. Ask the microvac, wailed Jaredette 1. Ask him how to turn on the stars again. Go ahead, said Geraldine. It will quiet them down. Jaredette 2 was beginning to cry also. Jared shrugged. Now, honeys, I'll ask microvac. Don't worry, he'll tell us. He asked the microvac, adding quickly, print the answer. Jared cupped the strip of thin cellophane and said cheerfully, see now, the microvac says it will take care of everything when the time comes, so don't worry. Geraldine said, and now, children, it's time for bed. We'll be in our new home soon. Jared read the words on the cellophane again before destroying it. Insufficient data for meaningful answer. He shrugged and looked at the visiplate. X-23 was just ahead. VJ-23X of Lameth stared into the black depths of the three-dimensional, small-scale map of the galaxy and said, "Are we ridiculous? I wonder in being so concerned about the matter." MQ-17J of Nurkon shook his head. "I think not. You know the galaxy will be filled in another 5 years at the present rate of expansion." Both seemed in their early 20s. Both were tall and perfectly formed. "Still," said VJ-23X, "I hesitate to submit a pessimistic report to the Galactic Council. I wouldn't consider any other kind of report. Stir them up a bit. We've got to stir them up." VJ-23X sighed. "Space is infinite. 100 billion galaxies are up there for the taking. More. 100 billion is not infinite, and it's getting less infinite all the time. Consider, 20,000 years ago, mankind first solved the problem of utilizing stellar energy, and a few centuries later, interstellar travel became possible. It took mankind 1,000,000 years to fill one small world, and then only 15,000 years to fill the rest of the galaxy. Now the population doubles every 10 years. VJ-23X interrupted. "We can thank immortality for that." "Very well. Immortality exists, and we have to take it into account. I admit it has its seamy side, this immortality. The Galactic AC has solved many problems for us, but in solving the problem of preventing old age and death, it has undone all its other solutions." "Yet you wouldn't want to abandon life, I suppose." "Not at all," snapped MQ-17J, softening it at once to, "Not yet. I'm by no means old enough. How old are you?" 223, and you?" "I'm still under 200. But to get back to my point, population doubles every 10 years. Once this galaxy is filled, we'll have another in 10 years. Another 10 and we'll have filled 2 more. Another decade, 4 more. In 100 years, we'll have filled 1,000 galaxies, and in 1,000 years, 1,000,000 galaxies. In 10,000 years, the entire known universe. And then what?" VJ-23X said, "As a side issue, there's a problem of transportation. I wonder how many sun power units it will take to move galaxies of individuals from one galaxy to the next." "A very good point. Already mankind consumes 2 sun power units a year. Most of it's wasted. After all, our own galaxy alone pours out 1,000 sun power units a year, and we only use 2 of those." "Granted, but even with 100% efficiency, we could only stave off the end. Our energy requirements are going up in a geometric progression even faster than our population. We'll run out of energy even sooner than we run out of galaxies." "A good point, a very good point." "We'll just have to build new stars out of interstellar gas." "Or out of dissipated heat?" asked MQ-17J sarcastically. "There must be some way to reverse entropy. We ought to ask the Galactic AC." VJ-23X was not really serious, but MQ-17J pulled out his AC contact from his pocket and placed it on the table before him. "I've half a mind to," he said. "It's something the human race will have to face someday." He stared somberly at his small AC contact. It was only about 2 inches cubed and nothing in itself, but it was connected through hyperspace with the great galactic AC that served all mankind. Hyperspace considered, it was an integral part of the galactic AC. MQ-17J paused to wonder if someday in his immortal life he would get to see the galactic AC. It was on a little world of its own, a spider webbing of force beams holding the matter within which surges of subeons took the place of old and clumsy molecular valves. Yet despite its subthergic workings, the galactic AC was known to be a full 1,000 feet across. MQ-17J asked suddenly of his AC contact, "Can entropy ever be reversed?" VJ-23X looked startled, and at once said, "Oh, say, I didn't mean to have you ask that." "Why not?" "We both know entropy can't be reversed. You can't turn smoke and ash back into a tree." "Do you have trees on your world?" asked MQ-17J. The sound of the galactic AC startled them into silence. Its voice came thin and beautiful out of the small AC contact on the desk. It said, "There is insufficient data for a meaningful answer."